All right, and from my timing, it is 3:05, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I just want to thank everyone who was able to join today. Thank you so much for coming. We realize that this is a highly anticipated topic and something that might be helpful to you as you navigate this year in school. And so my name is Alexis Moore, and I'll be your host for today. I serve as the Navigator and Projects Associate for SYG Guilford. And at this time, I do want to give my other colleagues who are on the call a chance to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandy Kennedy, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Student Outreach and Post-Secondary Access. Thank you all for joining today, and I hope you all had a great break and are gearing up for a great semester.
Hello, everyone. Oh, sorry.
This is Tammy Alt. I am one of the navigators with Say Yes Guilford, and I'd just like to say Happy New Year, and am looking forward to the content Alexis has for us today.
Thank you, Tammy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria, and I'm a college advisor with College Advising Corps, and I am excited. I'm also excited for this webinar.
Thank you so much, Maria. Okay, let's dive right in. So again, welcome. We are so happy that you're able to join us today. Here is our agenda and what we will be going over. So we already did a little bit of our welcome, introduced ourselves, and we'll get into a short check-in in a second. We also want to go over the facts of anxiety to kind of get you set up with how to cope with anxiety. You need to know what exactly it is and the signs of it. Next, we'll move into coping with anxiety. And we'll also talk about anxiety and testing specifically. At the end, we do want to leave you with some resources and support, and then end officially with our upcoming events and reminders for the rest of this semester. Okay, so let's get into our check-in. This is something that we want to trend at the beginning of our webinars just to see how the group is doing, to get a temperature of the group. So at this time, all of our students, if you don't mind just dropping in the chat how you're feeling with a smiley face, a side face, or a sad face. And Brandy, since I can't see the chat, if you'll just give us a kind of overview of the responses in a minute or two, I would appreciate it. So go ahead and students, take this time to drop your status in the chat. How are you feeling? Are you feeling great? Is it a meh, could be better, or blah, not so great? Let us know.
Yeah, so far it looks like we have some who are doing great. Jacob and Xavier are doing great. And then some people are saying that it could be better. I know it's the Monday after the holidays. It's often hard to transition and get out of that. Um, I would say laziness, but sometimes much needed rest that we have. So looks like everyone is doing well or could be better. So we hope that this helps you process with some of the things that you may be feeling, whether good or bad.
Thank you, Brandy, and thank you everyone who participated in our check-in. Again, this is something we'll do at the start of each webinar. Okay, so as we move through our webinar today, there are some pondering questions that I'd like for you to consider. Do you experience anxiety? So do you have feelings of anxiety on a certain basis? What do you do when you feel stressed? So when you do experience anxiety, what are some things that you do to try to help yourself feel better? And then lastly, how do you fill your cup when it's running low? So when you're feeling all this anxiety, you're feeling all this stress, what do you do personally to make sure that you're filling your cup on a certain basis as well? So these are the pondering questions I'd like for you to consider as we move throughout the presentation today. Okay, so let's dive right in. Before I get into anxiety, the facts, I do want to stress that this is a safe space to talk about mental health. I know that this can be a touchy subject, so I do want to ask that if anyone says anything personally about their personal life and anxiety, to please keep it within this webinar. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable talking about mental health and that this is a safe space for everyone.
Sorry, Alexis. I will also add that while this is being recorded, if someone chooses for anything that they disclose to not be included, feel free to shoot me an email and I can edit it out of the video.
Thank you, Brandy. Great point. That is very important because you might mention something that's very personal. So I echo Brandy in saying that we invite you to send her an email if there's something that you don't want kept in the recording. Thank you, Brandy. So now I do want to get into what exactly anxiety is. So anxiety is your body's natural response to stress, and it's a feeling of fear or apprehension about what's to come or fear of the future. Many people can get anxiety and depression confused. Depression is when you are pondering the past. But if you consistently have feelings of stress about the future, that is anxiety. Everyone has experienced anxiety at some point in their lives, so that part is normal, okay? That part is normal. What is abnormal is if you have extreme feelings of anxiety that last longer than 6 months and it interferes with your daily life. So that means that you might be experiencing an anxiety disorder. So feeling anxious and seeing these feelings manifest into a physical reaction in your body are two different things, okay? When you see those thoughts manifest themselves physically, this is called an anxiety attack, all right? That's what you're experiencing. So some common signs of an anxiety attack include feeling dizzy, you get the chills, you start sweating, or you have hot flashes. You start to worry a lot. You're very restless. You have a lot of distress and fear, numbness, tingling. So if you experience these actual physical feelings, when these thoughts enter your brain, that could be a sign that you're having an anxiety attack. So I do want you all to know what exactly that is. So what then is test anxiety? So test anxiety is a combination of emotional reactions and physical symptoms that work together to interfere with your ability to do well on tests. So some common contributors to test anxiety include fear of failure. Maybe you come from a family where your parents stress a lot that you have to be perfect, okay, that you have to do well. So that fear of failure contributes to your test anxiety. A lack of preparation. So some students don't fully prepare before tests, and so that contributes to their test anxiety. Maybe perfectionism contributes to your test anxiety. So feeling like you always have to be 100% with everything, including your tests. Having high pressure in your life. Maybe you are coming from a family with a lot of siblings and they look up to you and you feel like you have to do perfect on any exam because you have a lot of pressure. That contributes to test anxiety. And lastly, a poor test history. So I will say that standardized testing, it's common for a lot of students not to do well on those, okay? And maybe in the past on each SAT or ACT you've taken, you have not done well because it's a standardized test and you have poor test history. That cycle can contribute to your test anxiety and it might interfere with how well you do on the actual test. So these are the contributors to test anxiety and I want you all to recognize that. We also want you to know and understand that we completely realize that test anxiety can be heightened during this pandemic. So what you see here are all of the things that you have to essentially balance and that are layered on top of each other as we navigate a pandemic. So you may feel like you've been forced to layer so many different things during this pandemic, and we want you to know that you are not alone. Okay, so at the top, we have the COVID-19 pandemic. That might be at the forefront of your brain because every single day you have to be reminded that you have to wear a mask, you have to be safe, you have to be clean. And that definitely is interfering with how you interact with other things that you have to do in your life. You also have to focus on academic success. So being in and out of school and still having to do well in such a different learning environment. And on top of all of that, you have to be a human, right? You have to manage your personal life happenings. And in between these layers is uncertainty. It's just, let's state it and lay it out flat. The uncertainty is contributing to your test anxiety as well, okay? You have to worry about all of these things, balance all of these things on top of a COVID-19 pandemic. And we want you to know that these added layers or added things could contribute to it being harder for you to do well on exams. So we recognize that, we know you recognize that, and we want you to know that things are different, especially for you as a student who navigates the COVID-19 pandemic, and you have to focus on other things in your life. Okay, now we have a special guest and a current college advisor to help walk us through tips, tricks, and advice to help you cope with your tested anxiety. Maria Lorenz is a college advisor on the virtual projects team for the College Advising Corps, and she's actually my former colleague. So how are you, Maria? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. What we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you some common questions from students who experience test anxiety. And if you can just give me your advice from a college access professional standpoint, we would really appreciate it and think that these students could manage their test anxiety a lot better. So for the first question, I want to ask you, what are 3 key pieces of advice you give to your students as a college advisor to help them manage their test anxiety?
Great question. So I think the top piece of advice that I give is always ask for help when you need help. And this can look like a lot of different things. Maybe you're in class and you're learning the material and you don't quite understand something that the teacher just said. I recommend circling it or highlighting it or starring it, whatever works for you, so you can go back over through that material with your teacher or with a tutor or with a virtual study group of your classmates. I really recommend keeping track of what you feel a little bit less than comfortable with in terms of the material, because that can really help. Another piece of advice I would say is definitely keep building your support system and know that your support system is there. So your teacher, your friends, your family, your counselor at school. I think it's really important to remember that when you're taking a test, it can be an experience that feels very isolating, that feels very much like I'm alone in this moment, but you have so many people who love you and who are there for you and who can help you prepare for the experience as well as get through the experience and succeed. And then the third piece of advice I would give is just remember to take time to breathe, and remember that the fact that you're nervous about the test or the fact that you may be experiencing test anxiety really means that you care about the test. And I think that's a really incredible thing and something something to remember just whenever you feel that sense of anxiety.
Yes, that's actually great advice, Maria. I really like the piece you mentioned about, building up your support system and your team that's around you. I think that a lot of students tend to try to do things on their own, especially when it comes to testing, and they don't realize that having that one person in their corner to talk to would make a world of difference. So I echo that piece of advice, certainly. Do you recommend any particular breathing exercise before testing? Like, and if so, what are they? Or can you demonstrate? I know it might be hard.
Sure. No, it's a good question. There are a couple that I like. One is very simple. I'll start with the most simple one, and that is just focusing on your breath. And it's really helpful because I know if I experience anxiety or if I've ever experienced test anxiety, I know that it helps me to take the focus away from the anxiety and move it towards something that's concrete that I can kind of focus on. So I can demonstrate this to the best of my ability right now. Just if I'm experiencing anxiety, take a breath and just be conscious of that breath and how it feels and how you're breathing. So as Alexis mentioned, one symptom of anxiety is that your breath quickens. So if you can become aware of your breath, it really, and I know this may sound simple, but it really does help to calm your mind and your body when you just become conscious of your breaths. Another exercise that I would like to bring to mind is called the balloon exercise. And it's also somewhat simple. What you do is you imagine that you're blowing up a balloon. And full discretion, I'm actually not very good at blowing up balloons, so I will do my best for this demonstration. But what you want to do is when you're breathing, imagine that you're inflating a balloon. And picture the balloon in your mind. And then when you breathe out, imagine the balloon deflating. And once again, this exercise gives us a chance to focus on something other than the thing that is giving us anxiety, whether that be the test, studying for the test, or even after the test. So that's something that I find really helpful when it comes to breathing exercises, is just moving the focus somewhere else.
Awesome. All great pieces of advice. I personally experience anxiety. I think I mentioned that earlier in the webinar. And I can attest to the fact that your breathing and how you breathe and exercises, these exercises as an example, will really help center your mind and help you focus. So thank you for that. What study habits do you recommend for students who experience test anxiety? Are there any particular ones?
Definitely. My number one study habit is this is going to sound a little bit confusing, but I'm going to explain, to make time to make time. And what I mean by this is to make time to schedule out your time in studying, and definitely well in advance prior to the test. So at least 2 weeks before the test, I would recommend, if you know there's a big test coming up, I recommend asking your teacher how they recommend that you might best prepare for the test. I think it's always important to communicate with your teacher. And then I also just recommend setting time to sit down and schedule out, okay, I have all of my material. I know the test is going to cover these 2 chapters, depending on the situation, depending on the course. How am I going to take all of this information and make sure that I'm studying a little bit every day, maybe 30 minutes every day or an hour every day, depending on how much time you have. And that can really help if you study a little bit every day. And not only that, but you make time to study a little bit every day. You make time to actually sit down and make that schedule, because that allows you to hold yourself accountable to your study schedule. So that's a big tip that I have, is make time to make time. Communicate with your teachers for sure. If you have any questions about the material, I definitely recommend bringing it to your teacher, since they're the person teaching the material. But I also recommend forming a virtual study group, as I mentioned earlier. Or if you have any access to any sort of tutoring services, I know that's helped me so much in my past experiences with tests and with school. Tutoring can be really helpful because it can serve as a check-in. So even if you think you are confident with the material that you're learning, it's really helpful to just kind of explain where you're at to someone else who knows the material, and see if you're on the same wavelength with the material.
Awesome. Thank you. So we know that how well you do on tests can largely have to do with how you feel while you're taking the test. And a lot of that has to do with the food that you might eat right before the test. So I know this might be a little bit of a wonky question, but do you recommend any certain foods that students can eat before test day or right before the test that will help boost the brain?
For sure. I think, I know whole grains are really good to eat before a test. So if you have whole grain cereal, I know oatmeal is good to eat before a test. Fruit, another, like fresh fruit, if you're able to have fruit and whole grains and oatmeal. I know eggs can be really helpful. The only thing with eggs that I just want to mention is I know that they're very healthy. Personally, eggs make me feel a little bit queasy in the morning. So I encourage you all to be confident and to go into the morning eating a healthy breakfast, but also kind of knowing your body and knowing like what makes you feel good, if that makes sense. So if I'm here saying eat eggs before the test and you're feeling like I'm not really an egg person, that's okay. I would say eat what makes you feel physically good, as well as keeping in mind the whole grains and the oats and the fruit, for sure. And yogurt can be really helpful too.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So let's say a student becomes overwhelmed while they're actually taking the test, get to question 6, and all of a sudden, all of these feelings arise, right? I know you mentioned a little bit about the breathing exercises, but is there anything that they can do right there in that moment to get them back on track mentally to focus on that test they're taking?
Definitely. I think there are a lot of different strategies, and don't worry if this happens to you. I can promise you this has happened to me. Maybe one question, you don't remember studying that material, or something is just throwing you off about the test. I recommend definitely taking a breath. I recommend taking a breath before and after each question if you're able and if you have time. I recommend looking through the rest of the test to see how much more you have to go. and seeing if maybe you can finish the rest of the test and then come back to that question, depending on how sizable that question is. I also do want to bring up the importance of communication here as well. That you can raise your hand and ask your teacher if you have a question about the test. I encourage you to become familiar with your teacher's policy regarding asking questions during the test. And then lastly, this is kind of a prior to this situation, I encourage you to remember your support system and build a plan with your counselor, with your family, with your friends, whoever your support system is, with your teacher, for what you can do if you get stuck on a test. Just in general, I think that this conversation is a really productive conversation to have with your support system so that you can have a plan in mind when this situation arises.
Yeah, very helpful, very helpful. So I just have a couple more questions for you. The first one, sometimes students with test anxiety, they worry about their performance after the test, like the test is over and maybe an hour or two afterwards, they become consumed with all of these thoughts and they're very worried about how they did. What self-care do you recommend for after the test for students to feel better about their performance, no matter what that performance was?
For sure, I think that's a great question. I think I have a twofold answer for that. One is be kind to your mind and be kind to your body. Be kind to yourself. Eat, cook your favorite meal, watch your favorite show, read your favorite book, talk to a loved one. Try to do something that you know makes you happy. Another piece of advice I would give is try to shift or reframe your mindset surrounding the test itself. Rather than think, oh my gosh, what grade am I going to get? Try to think of it as a learning experience and try to go into it with a growth mindset and think, well, what can I learn from this experience, no matter what the outcome is, that can help me improve on my next test and can inform how I study for my next test. And then I also would just add, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this before, but if you do receive a test grade that you're not happy with for whatever reason, I think the best advice I can give is to go over that test with your teacher or go over that test with your virtual study group or your peers or your family or your support system and move forward with the test as a learning experience. So I really encourage you to think of any test rather than an outcome as an experience through which you learn and you grow and you move forward.
Thank you so much. And then just any last words that maybe I didn't ask you a question about, any extra tips or advice that you want to leave the group with?
Sure. I think I'd like to echo what I just said, which is just, I really think it's important to shift that mindset because I think it can help with the anxiety. And I'd also like to echo that you're not alone in this. Any test that you take, you have your whole support system behind you. And yeah, I mean, I think communication is key. Communicating with your teachers, communicating with your counselor, communicating with yourself. That's a big one. Doing check-ins with yourself. How do I feel right now about this test? If I'm anxious, why am I anxious? What specific aspects of this experience are making me anxious? I think it's important to be in touch with yourself and why you're feeling anxious. And last of all, just remember that you're amazing, and no matter what happens, it's a test, and you will learn something from it, and you will grow from it.
Perfect ending. Thank you so much, Maria. That, I feel like that was very helpful, and I feel like a lot of students could learn from everything you just said. So students, if you do have a particular question for Maria, I ask that you hold it until the Q&A portion. And Maria, if you don't mind sticking around for any questions you might get, we'll get to that in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to what exactly you can do to combat your test anxiety well before the exam. So a lot of these things Maria mentioned in our conversation, but the first is to be prepared. So know what you need before the exam, whether that's a study schedule down to materials like pencil, paper, calculator, well before the exam so that you know you're prepared and ready to go on test day. Study effectively. I cannot stress enough how helpful a study plan is at least a couple of weeks before the exam. It will really help you understand and compartmentalize what you have to study. And it'll also help you feel like you're getting a lot more studying done, as opposed to if you just study willy-nilly at whatever times of the day. Practice self-care. Okay, if you know that you are a person who gets stressed before exams, start those breathing exercises a week before. There's nothing wrong with that. Read your favorite book each night. Try to make sure that you are filling your cup on a daily basis before the exam, so that when test day comes, you don't feel so overwhelmed. And then this is just my tip or advice: practice positive affirmations. Remember that you are great, you are capable, and you can do this. And that, like Maria said, you have people in your corner, and that you're not alone, and you have others that you can rely on to feel a lot better about the test before the test comes. So combating anxiety right before the exam. So it's test day or the night before. Make sure you're getting lots of rest. Do not stay up cramming for this exam. If you created a study schedule, the more time you spread it out, you'll feel a lot more confident on test day about what you studied. So the night before, you need to make sure you're getting lots of rest. Eat breakfast, those whole grains, that yogurt, eggs, if that's your thing that Maria mentioned, and avoid caffeine. I know that a lot of us are coffee drinkers. Maybe you like Red Bull, I don't know, maybe you like Monsters, but those can really get your heart jumping. And that's just not good while you're taking an exam. So try to avoid caffeine. Gather all of your materials before test day. If it's test day and you're looking for a calculator, you're looking for an extra pencil, that's just going to add to your stress. So make sure, if you can, the night before, you have all your materials ready to go. And then arrive early. If you feel like you're rushing to the test, if you feel like you don't have a lot of time to sit down and gather your thoughts and just really get your mind together for the test, you could feel frazzled, and that will definitely add to your stress and your anxiety. So try to arrive as early as possible before you take the test. During the exam, so what happens if you start to feel anxious or nervous while you're actually taking the test? Maria mentioned a little bit of this, but make sure that you calm your body and your thoughts. Take a breath, get yourself back focused on the test or what's right in front of you. Practice positive thinking. Goes back to what I said before. Remember that you're capable and that you can do this and you've prepared for this. So practice positive thinking, sit comfortably. Sometimes if your legs are crossed, if you're slouched, that could aid in how well you focus and how you think. So do your best to do that. And then focus on the present and what's in front of you. Try to stay away from those thoughts about how you'll feel after the test, and just focus on what's right in front of you and the test that you're taking. That would definitely help you and your anxiety and your stress as you're taking an exam. So we want to definitely make sure that you have resources and support aside from school officials, family support, and us, the Say Yes Guilford team. There are other things that you could reach out to that will help your stress. And so the first that I have here is called 7 Cups of Tea. That's a 24/7 chat service that you can literally text this number and a volunteer will answer you to help you talk through the thoughts or your feelings. They do have a feature that you can pay for therapy, but if you don't feel like you need that, you just need someone to, send a few thoughts to. I think that will be helpful. And that website is 7cups.com. Something else that I thought was really cool that will kind of help ease your stress before test day is this animal and scenery live feeds website. You can literally watch lions in their natural habitat or cats at a cat rescue. So if that's your jam, if you love animals, if you love the ocean, they have fish as well. Live feeds will probably help you ease your stress. I've looked at the website and I think that it's really cool. A hotline that you can reach out to, it's called Just Scream, literally what it says. You dial this number, and when it answers, you can let out all your frustration with a yell, a scream, a whisper, whatever will make you feel better. So I just thought that was really cool and something that you could use to help you get rid of your stress. And then lastly, I completely acknowledge that some people may have very negative thoughts, and we want to make sure that you have this suicide prevention hotline number. If you or anyone else you know is experiencing negative thoughts, please, please, please reach out to this number or your other support system members to help you get that under control and to feel better about your daily life. Okay, that's a very, very real problem that students your age experience on a daily basis. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out for extra help in that respect. Okay, now I do want to open it up for questions about coping with test anxiety. We still have Maria on the line, so if there's any question you wanted to ask her, feel free to unmute or drop your question in the chat. And Brandy, I will need a little help with reading questions from the chat if you can help me with that.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So any question goes. Again, I want to make sure you understand this is a safe space. If there's anything you want to ask or talk about that you do not want included in the recording today, that is fine. Just please send us an email and let us know.
I would just, if no one has a question, I would just like to add is, I guess maybe about 10, 15 years ago when I was applying to college, I know that for me, I was a very, my GPA was great, but my test taking was not my strong suit and still is not my strong suit, even as I transitioned into graduate school. And so I would definitely say that I had to do some additional work in ensuring that I was creating a healthy environment internally and externally for myself. But also understanding that I know that we're just talking about anxiety in relation to test scores, but that number does not define you. And I want that to be very clear. Obviously, it does impact some things. Many colleges look at you holistically. And I'm not saying, go bum the test or whatever, but I am saying to just think highly of yourself and your abilities, because even if you're a great student or what someone would consider the great student, you can still struggle with this. And this is something that I can say that I've overcome. Great thing in grad school, we don't really have tests. However, that anxiety still does appear. And I actually learned some things from this that I could take and use in my everyday life. So just understanding that this isn't something that's, only high schoolers feel this. Believe me, working adults, graduate students, professionals, all of us have felt this in some way, shape, or form. And there's no one size fits all. What works for Alexis and Maria and Tammy and Jacob and Xavier and whoever else is here and Bella is not gonna work, may not work for me. But just understanding and getting to know yourself and what works best for you.
Thank you.
And we do have a question. I struggle with this one too. It is the night before and I have the jitters. So what should we do if we can't sleep the night before a test?
That's a good question. Definitely, from my experience in advising, I would encourage you to, once again, be kind to your mind, be kind to your body, be kind to yourself, and make sure that you're doing things that make you happy. So if you're struggling to sleep, maybe there's, if you like meditation, maybe there's a meditation.
Maria, did we lose you?
I know, I do know though some people like to limit their screen time before bed, but try to, I think, be kind to yourself. And remember that no matter what happens with this test, I can guarantee you that you will learn something really valuable from the experience itself. And I also would add, when you're studying for the test, I really appreciate what Brandy said about knowing yourself, because another thing I would encourage you to do is think about what your study style is. So there's auditory, visual, and bodily kinesthetic. Auditory, where you're hearing, visual, where it's like maybe you learn better from graphic organizers or flashcards, whereas bodily kinesthetic, like you're doing something, you're active while you're studying. Maybe you're doing your favorite TikTok dance while you're studying. It's up to you. But I think knowing yourself, knowing your study style, and being kind to yourself the night before the test, I think are important. And the last thing I would add in terms of kind of easing the anxiety the night before the test is try, and every night that you're studying, try to make it fun. If there's anything you can do to make the studying fun for yourself, I encourage you to do that. Because I think that can also help lessen the anxiety, especially that big night before the test.
I would also like to add that you incorporate a rest day before the test in your study plan. Typically, if you're studying all the way up until the night before the test, that could just be the only thing in your mind. Whereas if you study and just have that night before the test to relax and focus on what you have to do the next day, you can get to sleep a lot better. I also, in the past, was a student who struggled with getting to bed the night before I had really big things to do. So what I would do is try to wind down my evening 2 hours earlier before I had planned, just to give myself extra time to breathe, relax my mind, and get into the mindset of sleep. So I do hope that's helpful.
Um, I would also add that sometimes understanding that when some things are beyond your control, I know that there are some conditions that create environments, internal environments where people aren't able to sleep. And so if that's something and you've tried different things, don't be afraid to talk to your doctor or your healthcare professional. And I think that that's something that is frowned upon sometimes, especially when it comes to mental health within specific communities. But I also encourage you to understand, like, when you've exhausted the things that you have control over, and when you may need to seek out some additional help and resources.
I would add one more thing that I just thought of. It was in a book that I recently read, and someone was having trouble falling asleep the night before something that they were nervous about. And someone gave them the advice, instead of trying to sleep, just let your body rest, just try to rest. And I found that to be really, really helpful. And that may also apply to this situation. It's helpful to not like force your body to do anything that you feel like you can't do in that moment.
Right. Kind of like if you keep thinking about sleep, you won't sleep. So try to get your mind off of it. Okay, well, that was very helpful. Do we have any other questions that were in the chat?
Not right now, no.
Okay. I'll give everyone just a couple, maybe 15 seconds to drop anything they want to ask in the chat.
As a small plug, I know that some of you all are at a variety of different levels in high school, 11th or 12th graders, but we will have our upcoming SAT and ACT prep coming up. And so just be on the lookout. Alexis is going to share more details, but Maria mentioned having a study plan, or Alexis may have mentioned it, but having a study plan. And that's a great free opportunity that Say Yes Guilford offers for students to combat some of that test anxiety. I know that some of the test preparation can be very expensive or seem once you get that big old SAT book that I used to get a long time ago, you sort of feel overwhelmed by it. But definitely take advantage of those opportunities as resources that Alexis and Maria mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to move forward. Thank you so much for everyone who asked questions. And thank you, Maria and Brandy, for jumping in to help answer. All right, so upcoming events that we have for you all. So office hours, as a reminder, will be held on the first and third weeks of each month. Mondays are from 4 to 5 p.m., Wednesdays from 6 to 8, and Fridays from 12 to 1. We will have our first office hours the week of January 18th, and we will send a reminder. So just keep in mind, you can bring us questions that you might have, and we'll help you walk through a solution for anything that you need. So office hours, we welcome all of you to attend those. Our next actual event will be ACT Prep Academy on the 3rd of February. That event will not be from 3 to 4. It will actually be from 2 to 3 p.m. And then in March, we have our resume building on the 1st from 3 to 4 p.m. Like in the past, we'll send you all a reminder email that will include the Zoom link so that you all can join. Brandy, is there anything you want to add here?
Nope. As far as your office hours, again, it'll just be an opportunity for you to speak with myself or a member of one of the great Say Yes Guilford staff just about your college applications or even just creating a plan for that. And there will be a time slot for you to sign up for about 15 to 20 minutes to talk with one of us. So that's a great time to bring your questions, your thoughts, or if you want to speak specifically about any thing you may be experiencing during your college application process, then that's what these are used for.
Well said. Thank you. And then finally, we always want you all to stay connected with us. So these are all of our social media handles as well as our website. Please follow us, see what we're doing in the community, and stay connected with us as we move forward in this semester with you all. Okay, so that is our webinar for today. Again, I do want to thank you all for coming. I want to say Happy New Year to you all, and I hope that you all have gotten a good start to the new year. Please know that when it comes to mental health, you are not alone. You have many people in your corner who want to be there for you, want to help you navigate this very challenging time in your life. And again, I do want to stress that we are in a pandemic. So a lot of the feelings that you have are heightened, and we recognize that. So lean on us, lean on the office hours to come ask your questions and get that help that you need. And know that there are good people who want to make sure that you're on track as you navigate this journey. So I do want to say good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And we look forward to seeing you in office hours and our future events that we have in our webinar series. So thank you so much. Happy Monday.